Good afternoon and welcome to Crime Time with Dr. Debbie. It's Stu. I'm your host, Dr. Debbie Goodman, and we're very excited and honored to welcome Dr. Shirley Plantin, who is our special guest for today, our featured guest. And we can't wait to hear all about Dr. Plantin's background and expertise, and of course, her contributions and involvement to our South Florida community. So welcome and thank you as we finally refer to Dr. Shirley.
Thank you, Dr. Debbie,
What a
for having
pleasure.
me. It's always cool to be at STU.
Absolutely. And we know you're an alum and just
That's what they
doing.
tell me.
Yes. And we're so honored to have you. But for our guests who haven't yet had the pleasure of meeting you virtually or in person, may we first hear about yourself and your background and anything you would like our audience members to know about you.
Oh, wow. That's always a tough question, right?
Yes.
Talking about yourself.
Yes.
So, as Dr. Debbie says, I'm known as Dr. Shirley Plantin. Dr. Shirley works for me. My kids on the streets call me SP, and we'll get into that a little bit later. I'm an attorney by trade. I got my bachelor's and my master's here at St. Thomas. So I am an alum, for real, an esteemed alum.
Yes, ma'am.
But my passion has always been young people. And I think it really originated from church. So I did a lot of work with young people in church.
Mhm.
And along the way of preparing to go to law school, I happened to find myself working with gangs. First year of law school, getting ready to get out of first year, and I got a call from a friend that says, "Hey, there's this pilot program happening, and one of the programs is located in North Miami Beach, and we need someone who speaks Creole because it's specifically for a community, and it's a gang reduction program." And I was like, gang reduction, nothing about that sounds safe. But I dived in, and eventually I became a gang investigator with the Florida Gang Investigative Association as a civilian. And I think that piqued my interest. I like to say to people that to whom much is given, much is required. And you got to really understand that. And the more I did this work, I found myself questioning the why this work, right?
Yes.
And as we dive into it, it'll make a little bit more sense about the why. But I really wanted to understand, is this the calling? It's so easy to walk away. It's so easy to say, this is too much work, I'm not going to do it.
Yes.
As the executive director of U-Turn, U-Turn is a training and education consulting firm, really addressing the backstories that contribute to the gun violence in our community. So easy, we want to simply do Band-Aids, right? Okay, we got a kid in an after-school program, we put them in a PAL program, all great programs. But if we never dealt with the origin of the program, the origin of the problem, then once we remove the Band-Aid, we find ourselves right back with an unresolved, unhealed situation. And thereby leading to the writing of the book, The Backstory of a New Reality. We wrote
Which is
the
a
book.
great book. I'm going to give it
you.
a plug because I'm an author. I love the book and it's so important.
Thank you. And we really focused on making sure that we address the many backstories to gun violence beyond the missing Black father, all the dots that people want to talk about, not looking at the systemic issues. So we spent a lot of time looking at systemic issues. When the book came out and we started doing trainings across systems, people then asked, how do we apply this? There came the workbook. So now there's a workbook. It's a set, and U-Turn does quite a bit of trainings throughout systems. So we train law enforcement, we train corrections, we train mental health providers, funders, you name it, we train it, educators. And we are known for the conferences that we hold.
Yes.
Really wanting to bring all of these different systems together with community, with youth, with young people, looking at how do we do better? And I think the role that STU has played has been the most important because these are your future leaders. These are the people that's about to jump into the role, right? As we exit out eventually, do we want them doing the same things, expecting a different result? Or do we want to begin to cultivate them and put them around successful people and network so that they too can begin to understand there's a better way of doing things?
Amazing, Dr. Shirley. Wow.
Thank you.
Just the intro is a wow. And
Thank you.
thank
Thank
you
you.
for all that you've done and truly all that you do. It's making such a difference.
Oh, I appreciate it, but we couldn't do it without St. Thomas. Thank you to specifically the Criminal Justice Department. That is our home. That is where, we come and bother Dr. Debbie and we want to do this. How can we get some students? So we are forever grateful to St. Thomas. We're forever grateful to President Armstrong, who saw the
Absolutely.
vision,
Yes.
who understood it and said, yeah, we want this partnership. So we are indeed forever grateful.
Fantastic. So Dr. Shirley and our viewers, my background is a criminologist, a professor, and author. One of my main concerns daily is the safety, the security, and quite frankly, the survival of our citizens, but with specific emphasis on our youth. So can you walk us through a little bit with your expertise, your contributions, your background? Why are young people participating in crime?
Oh, wow. That we could have did a whole
Yes.
podcast just on that, right? But I think one of the things that we have to admit is that our system has constantly failed our communities. And it's not a Black thing, it's not a white thing, it's not a Hispanic thing. If we simply look at the makeup of our systems. Last year, our conference was really talking about the school to prison pipeline.
Yes.
And that's just one example. When a student in third grade fails a standardized exam, and then you've got private prisons being built on that student's back, that already tells you that there is a systemic issue that needs to be addressed. But
Yes.
before we even get to the systemic issue, one of the things that I like to say is schools are only there to teach students ABC and 1, 2, 3. There's a role that has to be done at home.
Yes.
There's a role for the parents. There's a role for community. When I do trainings, I often like to say it takes 12 sectors to make up a community. And those 12 sectors are indeed responsible for the success and the failure of said community. So some of the reasons that our kids are failing or are turning to violence has to do with socioeconomic reasonings. Some other reasons are because of lack of parenting, right? Parents are working 2 and 3 jobs trying to make it work. And now this kid is the one that's here trying to figure it out. You have issues of migration where parents don't speak the language and we're expecting a young person, because of course we understand young people tend to adapt and assimilate quicker than their parents. So now these kids are doing adult things like translating, having to go to the bank, and you're doing adult things, expecting that this kid is still adult things, but expecting that this kid is still going to be a kid, which isn't a process that frontal lobe really understands well. And then you just have the developmental process, which we've all gone through it. We've done some dumb things. It's just that we also need to understand that now we have compounding factors like social media, like the games that we're playing, like the music that we're listening to. The past 4 years has not been kind to our young people as a result of COVID. So we're seeing a lot of mental health issues, right? An uptick in isolation, an uptick of in bullying specifically. But I think to answer the question, there isn't one reason that kids are turning to violence. It is, of course, and you and I have had this conversation, the proliferation of guns. Like our kids have access to guns that police officers don't have access to, right? And the feasibility and the ease of them to get the guns, I think also, if I can get it and I can use it, we have totally removed, what's the word that they used to tell us? It's conflict resolution skills. Those have gone out the window. Right now, I remember when I was in school, conflict resolution, the teachers taught you, went through the DARE program and all those great things. And they tell you talk things out or you fight. Now we don't fight, we just pull out a gun. So there is a lack of respect for self. There's a lack of respect and value of another person's life. So all of that compound together leads us to many of the factors that contribute to the gun violence.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I'm thinking, Dr. Shirley, about some of these recent high-profile cases regarding children and guns, and then the massacres that potentially are impacting other students, other teachers. And what's your feeling, specifically I'm referencing the most recent Colt Gray case in Appalachia High School, and then we had the Ethan Crumley case in Oxford High School, Michigan. And how do you feel about parents who are literally putting the gun into their child's hand? What is that about? And should we hold them accountable when the child does something terrible?
Well, I think the accountability question is a big question, right? Because if there's anything we learned post George Floyd, everybody was throwing around the term accountability and accountability. And then when no one is being held accountable, the terms accountability go out the window because there was never a real structure for accountability. I think what we're seeing in these recent cases isn't new. It's just that they weren't publicized, because I remember being in a family court almost 10 years ago, where a judge said, and this parent went up and, again, understandably frustrated, saying, I can't do this, just take the kid. And the judge said, well, I can't just take the kid, because you just said to me, you have 3 kids and you work 2 jobs. So who do I hold accountable? Because after I send this one to jail, or I take him, like you said, the others are going to come through, because there's no accountability. And that parent, with that case, took on a whole life of its own, holding the parent accountable. I think if we're going, it's easy for us to say, let's hold systems accountable. We want to hold the police accountable, rightfully so. We want to hold corrections. We want to hold education. The system that is possibly the most important system is the family.
Agree.
And if we're going to talk about holding systems accountable, then we got to start with parents. If you know that there are some, and no one's talking about taking people's guns away. That's not the conversation here for me. It is, we have got to be more responsible, whether it be putting the guns in the hands of students that have questions have already been raised, or whether it simply be, you're not prepared to understand the totality or the damage that this gun can do. Yes, hunting is one thing. Taking it into a school is a whole different ballgame, right? Or pointing it at another person is a whole different ballgame. So I think we are headed in a direction in this, particularly in the criminal justice system, where we've got to do more than just hold the kid accountable. Parents need to own up and realize there's some decisions we've got to make better decisions. We can't just expect kid to make better decisions. The parents have to make some better decisions as well.
I agree. And sometimes the decisions that the parents make, and I too do a lot of PTA and PTSA speaking, and I often will reference the idea of the ostrich in the sand.
Right.
As parents, we can't be the ostrich with the head down and say, not my kid and not my household and not my community. So I agree.
And I think that's such a great perspective. I think one of the things that we have often found in gun violence, or around the idea of gun violence, is that certain communities tell you those are not my issues, because that's not my kid, right? And so when I train, I often say to people, you can move as far west of the suburb as you want, or as far east to the waters as you want. Gun violence impacts us all, because going to church isn't safe, going to the mall isn't safe, going to the beach isn't safe, and we all navigate in these spaces, right? Going to school isn't safe. So it isn't a question of your child versus my child. It's a question of our children. It's a question of our safety. And I think until we get to that point where Dr. Debbie's sons mean just as much to me as they mean to her, and my son means just as much to her, I think we continue to miss the memo.
You're right. I love that. And shout out to Prince, by the way, and my boys too.
Absolutely.
They're our biggest fans.
Yes.
So then, Dr. Shirley, to tap into your expertise, and I know how much you do with, local, state, federal law enforcement, what do we need to do? 2024 moving forward, how do we cultivate the environment at the church, at the school, in the community, at the movie theater, at a restaurant, where we could feel safe? What has to happen for that to happen?
And I think so that's a loaded question, right?
Yes. If it's too loaded, you take whatever part.
And I think if in fact we had the answer, we would have done it before, because we've been here since before Sandy Hook. We've done it with, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas.
But see, that's my concern, Dr. Shirley. So it's your son, it's my boys, it's the entirety of not only our South Florida community, but our country.
Correct.
Where it's a concern now to even send the child to school and not knowing, are they
coming home? And that fear is real. And I think the basis of your question was working with all these different levels of government. Again, we can't just speak to law enforcement, right? Because what I found in my experience and my work, many of my gang members that I've worked with, and I dare to say at least 75 to 80% of them played sports. So there is a place at the table for your athletes. There's a place at the table for the coaches, because a lot of times these coaches are the only sense of family or a sense of authority, a masculine figure that can put some discipline. And I think oftentimes we're not inviting those people into the space, right? So there is a space for the coaches, there's a space for the faith leaders, there's a space for your after school programs, because in order for us to tackle this, it's going to take all of us. We cannot police our way out of this whole concept of gun violence or the active shootings or the mass shootings, whatever term we decide we want to be more comfortable with on any given day.
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, they too are running into something, not knowing what to expect.
Right.
So it has to take all of us. And a lot of times when we're having these conversations, and I blame myself too, because when I host many of these meetings with the different levels of government, you'll notice that the common everyday person isn't in the room, right? The parents aren't in the room.
Right.
The young people aren't in the room. So this past summer, we spent a lot of time, U-turn, just talking to young people through our teen chats and wanting to learn, wanting to understand what are we missing. And I started every teen chat asking, how safe do you all feel in school? And everyone said, not at all.
Really?
Not at all.
See, that gives me chills.
And in the past, school used to be your safest place, right?
course,
School used to be the space where kids didn't want to be home. If things were going wrong at home, they'd run to school. Because they knew they'd be around friends. And now you have certain students saying to you, I feel stressed going to school. I don't want to be at school. And then there is back to that accountability where they're feeling, many of them said, we can't even trust the adults to protect us. That says we're headed for trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then Dr. Shirley, I know it's controversial, but these are some of the conversations we have with our amazing students here at the university. And the question is, should we or should we not be implementing some type of wanding system or electronic type of system when our students are entering a K through 12? Are we at that point, or do we not want to go down that pathway?
So to your point, it's been very controversial.
Yes.
I know Miami-Dade specifically has been going back and forth on this for years.
Yes.
Since the last superintendent and the superintendent before that.
Mhm.
And I know this year Broward County has actually started testing it out at some of
Mhm.
their high schools, and we saw the first week the debacle that created
Right.
because kids were still in line.
Mhm.
2
And it was
3 hours
first
in,
period,
right?
right.
First period.
Yeah.
But I do believe that long are the days when we can just say it'll fix itself.
Mhm.
So something has to happen.
Right. Nothing changes if nothing changes.
You can't expect a
So-
different result if we continue to do the same things.
Correct.
So very controversial. I also think the idea of our students having to do the drills, the active shooter drills. You have a
Yes.
lot of kids now who, across the country, some counties and public school systems are saying, we're not doing this anymore
Mhm.
because it's creating more trauma,
Yeah.
which is another contributing factor to the gun violence, right? That we've seen. It's creating more trauma. These kids feel any door that closes, kids are jumping.
Yes.
So I think it is going to take a whole
Mhm.
approach. It's going to take the approach of not just law enforcement, the approach of not just the school,
Mhm.
but the guns are coming into the schools.
Right.
So again, that accountability piece.
Yeah.
We need to have conversations. How do we not allow the guns to get into the school?
Mhm.
Because schools have to do their job. If the job is to not only teach, but now to also keep the students safe,
Yeah.
then if it's the wands,
Mhm.
if it's the metal detectors, at some point something has to be done. And
Yeah.
I've come to the point doing this long enough that we're not going to please everyone.
Mhm.
And if we're not going to please everyone and safety is priority, then these funds that are coming from the feds, we've got to implement them someplace.
Mhm.
And it can't just be, we're going to have locked doors, because clearly that's just part of the solution. So
Yeah.
is it the windows? Is it the wands? Whatever it is, one child, one baby is too much for
Right.
us to lose
Mhm.
because we're bickering back and forth about the best solution. Sometimes it's not coming up with the best solution, it's working through and evolving to get to the best solution.
Right. And maybe it could be something as, not that I want to simplify it to too basic a level, but the whole see something, say something, so that kids recognize and understand that they're not being a snitch, let's
Right.
say, but they're potentially saving lives when they can report something they may have heard or may have seen.
Correct.
The whole, it just doesn't look right, sound right, feel right, so let's let the experts take a look.
And I think the whole see something, say something has worked, but then we're also living in this generation where everybody fears being the snitch,
Yeah,
right? That
right.
idea of being the snitch, that idea of I don't want to be the one to tell. But what we also find is while they combat that this dilemma they find themselves in,
Mhm.
a lot of times the guns that we find that don't create the havoc yet happens to be from a student that said something, a student that heard a conversation
Mhm.
and happened to go tell someone.
Yeah.
I also think we are addressing gun violence too late in the game.
Mm.
We are addressing gun violence too late in the game for fear of thinking, well, we don't want to traumatize kids. Well, babies are dying.
Yes.
And anybody who knows me knows what we do is have real courageous conversations.
Right.
I'm big on these difficult discussions. Babies are dying. We've got kids playing games that have guns.
Mhm.
They're listening to music that's talking about shooting. So this idea that we can't talk to younger kids about guns,
Mhm.
I think when we wait to have these conversations late in elementary, middle school, and high school, we've exposed children. Remember, we've got kids holding iPads and phones at 2 years old.
Yeah.
So whether it's reels, whether it's shorts, whatever's coming up, now you've got cartoons playing with guns.
Mhm.
I think we're waiting too late, and hence, so I'll do a shameless plug. We just put out a coloring book, a series of coloring books,
Very good.
K through second, third through fifth, and sixth through eighth.
Awesome.
Really trying to get into spaces that our messaging
Mhm.
may not get in, but if I can help a parent have the conversation
Great.
just in a coloring book, if we can get if we can get it in an after school program,
Mhm.
because the point is we're waiting too late, and what we don't want to have the conversation about, the kids are ready to have it. I've learned that a long time. They told me, SP, what you shy about? We already having this conversation. We know
Mhm.
who's shooting people
At
up.
younger and younger ages,
And
probably.
younger and younger ages. So our criminals are getting younger. Our shooters are becoming younger.
Wow.
You've got 7 and 8 year old shooters.
Mm.
So if we're waiting at 18, if we're waiting at 15 and
Yeah.
13 to have conversation, but you got a 7-year-old shooter, a 7-year-old who's being used as a runner on the street, a 7-year-old who's been exposed to everything else, we just lost 7 years of impacting that child's life. So see something, says something matters,
Yeah.
but we also have to provide them with the resources
Mhm.
to feel comfortable enough to see something and say something.
Very good. Dr. Shirley, we know how connected you are and attuned to our local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies and representatives. So what are you hearing from them? What are their concerns? What are they focused on? What can we also do to help support them in this fight? It's almost like a daily war of
It
safety,
feels that
security,
way. It
survival.
literally feels that way.
But how do they feel about all that's going on and the multiplicity of challenges that face our citizens as well as the officers?
So I think for them, there is solace in the fact that the numbers tell us that crime has gone down.
Yes,
Right.
the UCR
The
just came
UCR
out with their
came out.
report. We all read it.
The numbers have come down.
Yes.
And one of the things that I often say, so when we're in meetings and people want to tell me, well, 30% year to date, the numbers look better. And I say, that sounds good on paper. But the lived experience of the person who the shooting is happening next to their house don't care about our UCR report.
Right.
They don't care about our data. None of that matters because lived experience matters. So when I have a 9-year-old kid who every night has to take their mattress off of the bed and put it on the ground for fear that that a bullet may come through their window, and that is the only way they feel safe.
Wow.
Even though the numbers tell us one thing, what community is living and the expectation from community vis-a-vis the police is very different.
Wow.
So police find themselves, although yes, they want to pat themselves on the back. We're out here, we're doing community policing, we're bridging the gaps, we're trying to build better community trust. But then that next call comes in that I've got a 7-year-old that's dead. I've got a 10-year-old that just got shot. I got 2 15-year-olds. I got 3 15-year-olds. That reality is very complex. It's a complex reality for them.
Yes.
And then I also want, when we talk about law enforcement on every level, we need to understand that these are not superheroes. These are people who go from call to call and have to see things and then have to be expected to be A-okay for the next call and then turn around and take it home and be okay.
Right.
So there is this is layered, right? The job that they're being asked to do, understandably, they chose to do it. But we also need to understand that law enforcement cannot do this by themselves.
Right.
And I credit many of my amazing partners, many of which come to the conference and want to have their voices heard and want to learn from the community themselves.
Yes.
What can we do different? Because we can throw great words around community policing. What does it look like?
Yeah.
What does that look like? And community policing isn't just coming into the community, but it's also inviting the community into your police department.
Correct.
It's also seeing me without the gun and being as, oh, you're human. So oftentimes when they come to our conference, we ask them, don't wear the uniform.
Yeah.
Because we want people to see you as human and value you you wear a uniform and you're asked to do a job,
Yes.
but you too
Are human.
are human and you feel the pain, and every call you you pull up to, or you have to make the notification. It doesn't get easier.
Yeah, you're right.
So how can we help? One is understand that they're human, just like we give grace to every other career.
Yes.
But then I also think we would have less work for them if we as civilians did our part. Civilians as parents, civilians as the church, civilian as the other 12 sectors, understanding that it's not just the police's role to keep us safe. It really takes a community to keep all of us safe.
It really does. Thank you. And a perfect segue to all of the great programming and presentations that U-Turn Youth Consulting provide. So will you please tell our viewers about just some of the amazing work of the Saving Our Youth Symposium, of We the People, Youth Biz, so much great activity going on throughout a calendar year, and what each one highlights.
So we host, in addition to all of the trainings that we do for systems, for schools and whatnot, that's the work that people don't see. That's the grunt work. But the work that really is involving the community and our partners and everyone else, we host 3 community events. The first one is called We the People. And the We the People is really, how do we hold systems accountable? So we will identify a system and we tear it apart with the community in the room. What would you like to see? How do you believe the system has failed you? What would make it better? Because I think it's important to host these conversations, because a lot of times those of us who are in this field, we talk to one another, but are not speaking with the people who are actually impacted by the policies that put in place.
Yes.
So we've done education, we did the book bannings this year, we've done sports, we've done a couple of them. And I think what makes our events different is because they're all relevant and current themed. So yes, we have academia in the room, like the great Dr. Debbie, and we have many other professors in the room, but this is about real life experiences. How do we apply everything we learn in the books and make it practical? So it's no longer theory, it's what people are living every day. The second event is the Youth Biz Summit.
Which I love.
Yes,
Like
one of your favorite
Shark
events.
Tank. That's one of my favorites. Yes.
The Youth Biz Summit really came about because we understand that we can tell young people to put down the guns every day. But if their source and the reasoning for the guns is financial, then we've got to address that. That backstory needs to be addressed. So what we do is this generation has amazing entrepreneurial spirit. How about we, how do I best say this? How about we wrap our arms around them and provide? You've got them doing hair, they do eyelashes, they do braids, they do the haircut. They're already doing it.
Yeah.
So the idea of the Youth Biz, we want you to come pitch your business. But while you're pitching, I also want you to understand that if you don't do it positively and you choose to go down the negative way, which is the scamming, the fraud and everything, here's where it lands you. But we also want to give you the opportunity to get it right.
Yes.
So they pitch their business. We provide seed money to the winners. They go through then a 4-week business coaching to ensure that the dollars that we're pitching don't just go to shoes. They don't go to Jordans. They're opening SunBiz accounts. They're opening websites. And then the following year, the winners come back and they have the opportunity of showing off their business and highlighting their business. Our winners have done an amazing job. The businesses have been
one of my
awesome.
favorite times of year.
And I can say that many of our attendees then come around and support the businesses of the students, the law enforcement officers, the educators, the counselors. They support the businesses. And then our largest event, which is the event that's coming up in a couple of weeks right here at St. Thomas. St. Thomas is our platinum sponsor, is the Saving Our Youth Symposium. It's everyone that we've had the opportunity to train throughout the year who are now coming together collectively, learning from one another. Well over 20 different sessions, over 75 speakers, young people, academia, professionals, you name them, at every level, elected officials, everyone's in the room, again, around that idea that saving our youth is going to take all of us. It's not just on Dr. Debbie who's doing the teaching at St. Thomas. It's not the elementary school teacher. It's not just the mental health counselor, but it's everybody. And I can preach it, but it's better when we can actually teach it. That idea of each one reach one, each one teach one happens at the Saving Our Youth Symposium.
Just to wrap up, anything else that you would like our students to know? They're criminal justice majors, they want to get involved in our field. Any direct advice you can give them as our future leaders of criminal justice?
So as a criminal justice student myself, I think one of the things when I came out here, I was like, what am I going to do with this degree? Well, for me, I knew I was going to law school. So that was what propelled me to law school. But I really want young people who are in this field to understand it is a broad degree. That means there's so much that you can do. This idea that you graduate and all you can do is become a police officer is not a reality. Criminal justice can take you into healthcare. It can take you into juvenile justice. It could take you into mental health and counseling. It can take you into education. It can take you into a realm of arenas that you didn't even see the possibilities.
Yes.
The idea is you got to know what you have a passion for, right? Because the reality is, if you do what you have a passion for, you don't work a day in your life.
Right.
But you got to find that passion. And Dr. Debbie can't teach that to you. You got to find what matters to you, and you got to determine what change do you want to see. Because the reality is, the change doesn't come unless you're a part of it. I say this at the end of every conference we have. There isn't going to be a Calvary. We are the Calvary. The change we want to see has to start with us.
Yes.
And that change can't be after you get the degree, which is what we often think. And I know this generation, it's not that serious, which is why we come and we talk to the football players and, we lecture at some of the courses, because I wish someone would have said to me, start thinking about what really matters to you while you sit in this class, not while you're walking across the graduation stage.
Yes.
By that time, it's a little too late.
Wow. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes episode 3 of Crime Time with Dr. Debbie. I'm your host, Dr. Debbie Goodman. Again, we are so honored and delighted to have the awesome and amazing Dr. Shirley Plantin for taking time to share her expertise, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.